2026 World Cup has had a rough go so far. A lot of it self-inflicted given the pretty much extortionate pricing of the tickets. I mean, they are more or less 10x the price of tickets from the 2022 World Cup. And I mean, the resale prices for matches in those latter stages, those could be a down payment for a condo in some places here in Canada. But now we're also seeing calls to boycott this World Cup from various individuals in the sports and political world, many of which coming from Europe. With every day that passes, someone else seems to throw their hat in the boycott ring. But as you know, and as I know, this is nothing new. We've seen calls to boycott the previous two World Cups in both Qatar and Russia.
Human Rights Watch is calling on world leaders to boycott next month's World Cup opening ceremony in Russia.
Whether it was down to the invasion of Crimea by Russia or human rights in both Qatar and Russia, there were loud protests at times that came to nothing in the end. So like I said, we've seen this before, but is there anything different about things this go around? Curious to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments on this World Cup in general, whether you think any substantial protest or boycott will happen, what have you. So let's get started on what exactly everyone is unhappy about.
They're not there for us on Iceland, that I can tell you.
Now, of course, the old fellow in the video needs no introduction, Donald Trump, who meant to say Greenland there.
I was wrong.
As the constant speak of the United States wanting to annex Greenland, part of the Kingdom of Denmark, has pissed off many Europeans. Before that, remember, he spoke of wanting to annex Canada as well. Now, without going too deep into the weeds of it all, Trump has said that he has a, quote, framework of a future deal, unquote. But then he also said in Davos, quote, "We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force, where we would be, frankly, unstoppable." So yes, that comment before this framework stuff upset plenty of European nations, with even recently people like France's President Emmanuel Macron expressing support for Greenland, European sovereignty, as well as calls to stand up to bullies. Another aspect of this are the tariffs that are upsetting everyone pretty much internationally, but on top of that, Trump threatened to place a further 10% tariff on goods from Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, Netherlands, and Finland, almost as a bargaining chip or a way of strong-arming these countries into giving or selling Greenland to the United States. He said that these tariffs would stay in place until a, quote, deal is reached for the complete and total purchase of Greenland, but he dropped those tariffs after mentioning the, aforementioned framework. Now, another thing is the travel bans that have been placed upon many countries, 4 of which are actually competing at the World Cup: Senegal, Ivory Coast, Iran, and Haiti. Those fans cannot go to the United States currently. Speaking of traveler immigration, ICE and everything that has occurred within the United States is another topic that the rest of the world has sort of looked at with shock and horror from the outside. For every criminal or what have you that is captured by ICE, you have a 5-year-old or someone else who has greatly contributed to the communities that they work in, whether they are there legally or not. They get the same violent treatment. An American woman was killed by federal agents as she tried to drive away from them. An American man was executed by federal agents, and now you're seeing great scrutiny and even calls for impeachment of the Secretary of Homeland Security from both Republicans and Democrats. Also mentioned have been the USA's involvement with Venezuela, the more expansionist policy, as well as threats of involvement in Iran as well. And so, within this climate in the United States, you're starting to see people speak out more. Hell, even someone like Bayern Munich's Leon Goretzka has said, quote, "Of course, I'm aware of the political debates. I still expect it to be a great tournament. Donald Trump makes us feel not only German, but also European." No calls to boycott there, but certainly a show of European pride in light of the Greenland situation. This European pride wasn't really a thing that you saw in prior tournaments. Staying in Germany, you of course know how St. Pauli is a very political leftist club. Their president since 2014 has been Aki Gottlieb, which I probably said wrong, I'm sorry, and he was recently added to the German Football Association, or DFB's executive committee, so he is a vice president now, one of 11 or 12. Quote, what were the justifications for the boycotts of the Olympic Games in the 1980s? By my reckoning, the potential threat is greater now than it was then. We need to have this discussion. We do not know yet how the coming months will unfold. Right now, Germany's Foreign Office has issued travel advisories for parts of the United States. We are seeing people die on the streets as a result of actions by immigration enforcement, ICE. We do not know yet what will happen with Greenland. Against that backdrop, it is responsible and necessary to openly discuss which scenarios are on the table. Qatar was too political for everyone, and now we're completely apolitical? That said, even within the DFB, you have people like Bernd Neuendorf who disagree about the need for this discussion at this time. On top of that, Christian Schenderlin, Germany's state minister for sport, has said that the decisions to boycott tournaments are not those of politicians, but of the respective sports associations. So something like the DFB would make that call. In the Netherlands as well, you have Teun van de Kukken, who started a petition to appeal to the KNVB, the Minister of Health and Welfare, the Minister of Sport, and the Prime Minister of the country, which wants to see the Netherlands boycott the World Cup. So far, at the time of recording this, they have about 155,000 signatures. On the other side of things, however, the president of the French Football Federation claims that currently there is no question or no discussion of a boycott from the French national team side of things. This despite Macron speaking out against Trump's actions fairly regularly lately. Even within the USA, you're seeing, I wouldn't call it a support for a boycott or losing the World Cup hosting rights, but understanding if they were to. An American journalist, Alexander Abnos, recently wrote an article for The Guardian titled, "Removing the US as World Cup host would be eminently sad and entirely justified." I've linked to that below along with all of my other sources for you to check out for yourself. Also from The Guardian was this article from January 20th that I read, whose opening reads as follows. European football leaders are increasingly concerned about Donald Trump's wish to annex Greenland, and they have held initial discussions about how the sport could respond. The Guardian understands the implications for the World Cup this summer were among the topics raised among about 20 football association heads in Budapest on Monday. Talks about the Greenland crisis were held informally on the sidelines of an event organized to celebrate the Hungarian Football Federation's 125th anniversary in the knowledge that a unified European response may be required should Trump seek to escalate the situation. Since then, the framework talk came out. But on top of that, you have a United Nations law expert and diplomat, Mohammed Safa, saying that he canceled his tickets in light of what's happening with the US Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, in the United States, saying, quote, "ICE may decide that I am a gang member and I'll be locked in prison for a year with no charges, no hearing, no trial, no right to consult a lawyer, no phone call." There really is a ton out there, speaking of boycotts and this fear of ICE, which is completely fair. I mean, they've killed 2 US citizens and have sent 5-year-olds to processing centers at the opposite end of the country. And that's why Swiss criminal lawyer Mark Pieth has said, quote, "Fans should avoid the United States. They'll get a better view on television anyway. Upon arrival, fans should expect that if they don't behave properly with the authorities, they will be immediately sent home, if they're lucky." And guess who supported those words? Sepp Blatter. Someone who doesn't have a lot of credibility in this world now, given his controversies as the president of FIFA, though I truly have seen some people pine for the days of Sepp Blatter in comparison to Infantino, Donald Trump, Peace Prize romance era of FIFA. But anyway, it's also important to note, in the name of transparency, Pieth was a lawyer for Blatter during his time as FIFA president. So after all of this has been said, is a boycott likely? The short answer is no. You would see teams decline to go to the World Cups back in the day. I'm talking about like back in the 1930s, but that was more down to refusing to make the journey across the ocean, which was more difficult, sometimes down to, well, pettiness as well, I guess. You had Uruguay refusing to go to the 1934 World Cup in Italy because Italy didn't go to the 1930 World Cup in Uruguay. Reading about a lot of this in Jonathan Wilson's book, The Power and the Glory. That's it right there, upside down. It really combines like history and, well, the history of the World Cup and politics really nicely. Check it out. There were also the African sides who boycott in the 1960s because FIFA only allocated all of Asia, Africa, and Oceania one place in the 1966 World Cup. So yeah, Allocations have always been a point of debate. It's nothing new. But anyway, as far as a World Cup boycott goes, it hasn't happened. Not to the magnitude of, multiple nations all agreeing to boycott. There was, as Mr. Gotlick mentioned, the American-led boycott of the 1980 Summer Olympics in Moscow in light of Russia invading Afghanistan. 60 other nations joined them in the boycott, but plenty of nations still went to the Moscow Olympics, more than those that boycott. It needed a massive nation to lead the charge of the boycott, and then others followed. But a boycott wouldn't hold much weight unless a massive footballing nation, a contender, a team that brings tons of fans to the stadiums were to lead a boycott. Then maybe we would see some action here. That's what it would take, because as we know, you can post online all you want. You can even have some small gatherings to protest, but neither of those things do anything to actually make organizers, companies, owners, people in power actually do anything. They typically do not bring change. What does bring change is when the pockets of organizers and those in charge takes a hit, which they would should a big team lead a boycott. However, there's two things. Oh no, we lost my light. 1 second. Sorry about that. As I was saying, there's two things on the other side of this as well. One, the players who want to play in a World Cup, a tournament that comes around every 4 years that not everyone gets the chance to take part in. It may be your only chance in some players' cases. It may be their last chance in others, and convincing them to give that up would be very difficult. On top of that, the football federations of the respective countries, they have sponsors, they have commitments, and they don't want to see their pockets get hit either. So in spite of everything, with how things stand in this moment, it would take something big from Trump and the States in order for some kind of realistic action. Never say never. I mean, invading Greenland for one would certainly turn heads in Europe, an invasion on European soil technically. But even then, maybe I'm overly pessimistic in thinking that the major European nations would still compete no matter what kind of nastiness is going on in the United States. But like I said at the beginning, curious to hear what you guys think of this World Cup. Do let me know. Other than that, I'll see you in a couple of days with another one. Later, guys.